Hello everyone. So continuation of the previous video, let's have a look into the what are all the pulse milling machineries that are being used. So as I already discussed in the last video, the main two unit operations that are involved in the pulse milling is nothing but the pulse pearl, the dehusking and the splitting only. Okay, so for the process of dehusking and splitting, what are all the machineries that are being used for the processing or milling of pulses? So first one is the pulse pearler and second one is the pulse splitter. Whereas the pulse pearler is nothing but it is mainly you adopted for the operation of dehusking process, and the pulse splitter is used for splitting the pulse from the outer husk of the particular pulse. So getting into the topic, what is pulse milling? As we already know, it involves a several number of steps based on the techniques. So legumes like such as lentils, chickpeas and beans and other there are many other various edible forms of pulses. So mainly whatever type of pulse we are going to mill, all the pulses will have to undergo the basic two operations, that is the dehusking and the splitting. So for the process of dehusking and splitting, the main two machineries that are mainly involved are the pulse pearler or the pulse splitters for splitting and the pulse pearler for the dehusking process. So coming into the pulse pearling process, so that is the dehusking process only, we are going to use the machine for the pulse pearler. So first of all, in the process of pulse pearling, what happens, how the pulse is being dehusked is that first the particular pulse that has to be dehusked or that has to be milled is first fed into the particular dehusking machine. That is, we have to ensure that the cleaned pulses are only ensured to allow to enter into the machine. And the second operation is abrasive dehusking process takes place. That is, due to the rubbing of surfaces between the both the pulses, what happens is that the outer husks that are adhered to the pulses get loosened. So by the abrasive force that takes place in between the pulses, the outer husk gets loosened within the pulses. The third process is the husk separation. So husk separation is nothing but it is actually involved by using aspirators or even like sieve separators, and the gravity type of separators are also involved for the separation of the husk. And also sometimes based on the weight of the outer husk, actually depending on the different types of pulses, the outer husk that is adhered to the particular pulse actually varies. So the weight varies. So based on that, husk separation is done. Then last one, we are going to dehusk the pulse output. That is, it is ready to get into the next process, that the pulse splitter used for splitting the pulses. Next, getting into the pulse splitting process, first we have obtained the dehusked pulse. Now with the help of the dehusked pulse only, we are going to enter that pulse in the machine. Then splitting mechanism will take place. That is, there will be a two rotating cylinders. In between the two rotating halves, the particular pulse will get into the particular cylinder. Then there will be like we can adjust the parameters based on the type of pulse we are going to split, because based on the different types of pulses, the split damage has to reduce. So based on that, we can adjust the parameters. Then after that, we have to separate the splitted pulses separately and the unsplitted pulses separately by adopting either like sieving method or aspirator method or whatever it is. And then we have to get the splitted pulses that is actually ready for cooking purpose. So the main key difference both between the pulse pearler and the pulse splitter is nothing but the main purpose of pearler is to dehusk, then to abrasive rubbing is done. Mechanism is we'll get a after dehusked we'll get a dehusked whole pulses. Whereas in the pulse splitter, it helps to split the particular pulse into two halves. That is, it will not make into like small brokens. It actually helps the pulse to cut into two halves, and at last we'll get the end product as splitted pulses. So altogether we can use it in any culinary dishes. So keeping that in mind, the pulse milling machineries, how we can relate it with the design thinking framework, first we have to empathize or understand the need of the customer. That is, like what will be the